shit. Here we go again.
The jury will be out on where Lovebirds, Lucia and Jason rank in the league table of GTA player characters until GTA 6 makes its way into all of our grubby little mitts, and we suspect it might depend entirely on your tolerance for smooching. But for now, this is the definitive ranking of GTA protagonists. Or not. Sound off in the comments if you think I'm talking out of my exhaust pipe. And for our first entry, a little bit of housekeeping.
Good shot, kid. I think you got him.
In order not to spend the first third of this entire video going on about a bunch of terrible illustrations that nobody remembers, we only really care about GTA's 3D and HD universes, that is to say, every protagonist from GTA 3 onwards, as you can pretty much bundle up all the ones from the 2D era into one big ball of nothing. That's right, purists, you heard me. Look, no disrespect to Bubba and Rodney and I don't know, Terry? Was Terry one of them? But they are a collection of character portraits and little else. Character portraits that don't even alter the in-game PC beyond a simple palette swap. One thing you can say about this roster though is that all the way back in 1997, the Grand Theft Auto franchise allowed you to play as not one, not two, but 4 women in the form of Divine, Katie, Mika, and Ulrika. And given that it would take almost 30 years for the series to let a woman back into the driving seat, it's worth pointing out. The sequel, though, shelved the idea of a character select screen altogether and kicked off the more established tradition of a fixed protagonist. In the city. Okay, we're still in the 2D universe, but GTA 2's Claude Speed is actually a fairly fleshed out character compared to his predecessors, and by that I mean he was the first GTA protagonist to have more than one facial expression. In the live action movie that precedes the game, in which he's played by a male model who looks like he sells vape liquid from a folding table. Quite how this obviously contemporary set short film relates to the dystopian future world of GTA 2 has always been subject to fan speculation, but it's generally accepted that some sort of cryogenic freezing is involved, making GTA 2 a secret homage to Demolition Man, one of the 90s greatest action movies, and I would rather watch that every night until I'm dead than play the PS1 GTA games ever again.
I'm gonna love running this place.
Look, sometimes things were great back in the day, but then they're best left in the past.
My new man.
Now, there is a widely held belief among fan circles that GTA 2's Claude Speed is the very same Claude you encounter in San Andreas, who, as you all know, goes on to be the protagonist of GTA 3, also known simply as GTA 3 Guy, also known affectionately as Fido. He's an escaped felon left for dead by his girlfriend Catalina in a bank job gone awry, which, as it is much later implied in San Andreas, was the grand finale to a long Bonnie and Clyde streak that takes place across most of the 1990s. What we actually know about Claude amounts to very little, and most of it doesn't even come from the game he's the star of, having been conceived as a blank slate for players to project themselves onto, a mere puppet avatar in what was at the time an absurdly detailed urban crime simulation. Claude doesn't even get his name until we overhear it in an obscene phone call made to Carl Johnson.
Hello, Claude, baby. I thought I called to say how much I love you and how well endowed you are.
Nah, Catalina, it's Carl.
He does get brownie points for giving good head, but he's by far the least interesting main guy since the series fully embraced a third dimension. And that's mostly because he's just you. Boring old you. You watching this and already thinking up the comment you're gonna write if I don't put Tommy Vercetti high enough.
Mr. Vercetti.
Colonel.
Thank you for coming. Please sit.
Let's be blunt here, right? Tommy Vercetti's a wanker. No, really, he is. I know he fronts one of the best games in the series, and he's played so memorably by the late Ray Liotta, and he wears a cool shirt, but the elephant in the room here is that he's more or less a legally distinct Tony Montana from Scarface. He's in the same business, he has the same temper, he even lives in the same gaff. The main difference is that Tommy Vercetti isn't shown to be addicted to his own product, but despite this, is just as quick to anger and just as extreme in his outlook. Which means he's just a wanker, innit? And if you're not a cokehead and you're acting like a wanker, you're just a wanker, right? It's basically just maths.
After all, you're a conniving, backstabbing, two-bit thief, and I'm a convicted psychotic killer and drug dealer.
This is Pop's capo, Tony Cipriani.
Hey, I'm Tony Cipriani.
Tony Cipriani and Victor Vance both appear as minor characters in mainline GTA games and were later given centre stage in handheld spin-offs. Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories look to give players a proper home console GTA experience on Sony's impressive PSP handheld, which was roughly equivalent to a PS2 that you could stuff in your pocket, alongside your wallet chain and, I don't know, your T-Mobile Sidekick or whatever the we were carrying around back then. The point is, mates, that these weren't compromised versions of GTA, they were full-fat renditions of GTA's Liberty City and Vice City that you could play on the bus. But aside from that, they weren't all that memorable, and their stories centred around bit part characters who bore little resemblance to how they were portrayed in earlier games that they served as prequels for. Both Vance and Cipriani undergo some fairly drastic personality transplants in order to work as protagonists. To compound this, their voice actors change, meaning Tony Cipriani is no longer played by Michael Madsen, which is frankly the entire appeal of the character. And while he looks convincingly like a younger version of the GTA 3 quest giver, we have to accept that he's done a lot of aging in the supposed 3 years between the games. Like, I know he's meant to have eaten a lot of pasta, but come on, man. Meanwhile, Victor Vance doesn't even look like the same guy, and has the polar opposite attitude to being involved in the drug trade that he's depicted to just 2 in-game years later. These things can be hand-waved away given how little screen time the original character has, but that just raises the question of why? Why are these games centred around a quest dispenser and someone whose function in the original game is to get unceremoniously assassinated in order to provide character motivation for their dipshit brother? We don't need to know what these guys were up to before they did their bit and pissed off. I'd have rather had an entire game as Ken Rosenberg, Tommy Vercetti's cokehead lawyer, who's originally from Liberty City and could have headed up several handheld games in a sort of Ace Attorney style spin-off series, and frankly, I think it's very rude of Rockstar to stop taking my calls about it. GTA 4's acclaimed single-player story expansions, remember those, centre on characters whose lives are entangled with the main story, often allowing you to see certain events from alternate perspectives, which is pretty cool. What isn't cool is that Johnny Klebitz is a biker, and therefore you spend the vast majority of Lost and Damned, as good as it is, locked into riding a motorbike, which are abominable things in any universe, but particularly in the GTA one where driving is all about just haphazardly ploughing other vehicles out of the way with abandon, unless you're only on 2 wheels, in which case it's all about trying and failing to avoid getting flung off the thing. The bike mechanics were tweaked to account for this somewhat, but it was still a pain in the saddled arse to have to learn how to get good on them. That's not really a criticism of Johnny Klebitz as a character, but because he's a biker, he's also a smelly bastard who doesn't wash, and that's not conjecture, his personal hygiene issues are portrayed in the game. I'm not being funny, guys, but I just can't sign off on that. Have a bath, man, you wear leather all day. Ugh!
Oh, hey! Stick to the plan! What? Stick to the plan!
As the de facto leader of the trio that front GTA 5's single-player story, Michael may be one of the most relatable characters in the entire series, in the sense that he's middle-aged, a bit past it, and depressed. And you know what? He's a likeable guy. He's funny, and in his own way, he's a good dad, so much so that even his awful and grateful airheaded Californian Waynes can't sustain their built-in malevolence toward him for the entire story, which nowadays would make him a sort of millennial icon. Unlike most millennials though, he's loaded and has his own swimming pool, a yacht, and several luxury cars, and apparently enough money to pay for a therapist who operates from one of those Lego houses on the beachfront in Santa Monica, making him unfortunately part of the bourgeoisie and therefore despicable. The last but most handheldy of handheld spin-offs, GTA Chinatown Wars was set in the same Liberty City as GTA 4. Seen as something of a throwback to the earlier games, it featured a top-down perspective, much simplified graphics, and a story told in a visual novel style through character artwork, a stylistic choice made to accommodate the limitations of its original host platform, the family-friendly Nintendo DS. Yeah, we all did a double take about that at the time as well. The later PSP version looked and played a lot better, but that really shone a light on how perfunctory the story was. It's a fairly forgettable collection of cutscenes about Huang Li's rise from small-time drug dealer to triad golden boy. He's avenging his father, someone's nicked a sword. It's a bunch of tropes in a blender, but to his credit, Huang Li is fairly unique among GTA protagonists in his fierce loyalty to just one faction, as opposed to just being a sort of freelancer slash serial murderer slash one-man guerrilla war against the entire police department sort of guy.
Hey, what's your name, son?
It's Luis, man.
Louis. Oh no! You take me where I gotta go, which is back to Liberty City again, this time in its final expansion, The Ballad of Gay Tony, which is perhaps most well known for the titular character being a blatant homage to Fast Love era George Michael, God rest him. It ties together GTA 4's so-called impossible trinity of main characters whose orbits collide during the infamous diamond deal that is attended by Niko Bellic, guarded by Johnny Klebitz, and ambushed by our Louis. GTA 4's intricate trilogy comes to a head with Gay Tony, and you can see the protogenesis here of what was to come in GTA 5, a game whose trinity of main characters play out their stories simultaneously in real time. Three characters who all feel markedly different to inhabit, with different motivations and attitudes to crime. Louis is a smartly drawn, conflicted character who feels uneasy about his criminality and has ambitions of legitimacy. Also, his campaign displays a perceptible shift from the grimy pseudo-realism of Niko Bellic's world to something more resembling the Hollywood spectacle of GTA 5, another way in which this trilogy foreshadows the delights to come. And he's also not a smelly bastard biker, so you know.
You're still banned.
What about these two?
Whoever wins gets banned.
Trevor Phillips. GTA 5's Trevor isn't a biker either, but he probably smells even worse, and speaking of bikers, he infamously arrives on the scene and immediately murders a fan favourite one, none other than Johnny Klebitz. It's a brutal and unsettling scene in which a new GTA protagonist beats a previous one to death. Groundbreaking in that sense. San Andreas had a historic first when a former and current protagonist butted heads on the racetrack over a love interest. This encounter makes that rivalry look like a pleasant afternoon tea, and again it's an argument started over a love interest. I use the word love interest in the loosest sense. Johnny's murder is the catalytic event that kicks off the first act of Trevor's story, a breakneck rampage against remnants of the lost biker gang and Trevor's hostile takeover of every criminal enterprise in Hicksville. And it's at this point we all fell in love with him, an irresistible combination of Charles Bronson and Begbie from Trainspotting, hilariously depraved and more or less a self-insert for every GTA player, rampaging through the world in the exact same way as you have always done, even when it made little sense in context of the story. As Victor Vance, as Louis Lopez, as Niko Bellic, Trevor is a middle finger to the common criticism that GTA can't have compelling characters without massive ludonarrative dissonance. He's awful but lovable. He's a deranged substance abuser that lives in a rusty trailer, but he's clever, cunning and quick-witted. We love him because he's extreme to the point of absurdity, but ultimately we love Trevor because he is us. And the implications of that are probably a whole video essay on its own, which I'm not going to make, by the way. I can't be bothered.
Ooh, honey. Y'all telling me? Oh, he here. We living on top of each other, and it ain't right.
GTA 5's Franklin is a class act. As a professional car thief, he's probably the most run seal of Grand Theft Auto frontmen, and as a young, polite, generally unassuming guy from a humble background who's just trying to get on in life against the backdrop of endless financial crises and an America in a permanent phase of decline, he's actually quite relatable. Probably the most relatable of them all, in fact. That he's named after America's two most diametrically opposed statesmen is probably not a coincidence. Benjamin Franklin may be most famous as a mere euphemism for cash money, but he's one of the USA's most revered founding fathers. A scientist, a diplomat, a staunch public servant, even an early advocate of vaccines. By contrast, Bill Clinton is a guy from Arkansas who's mostly remembered for playing the saxophone and getting blown by an intern, possibly at the same time. These are the two Americas and a chart of its downfall. Franklin represents a generation just trying to make ends meet within the death throes of an empire. But at his core, he's just a petrolhead, man, and canonically such a good driver that his special skill is the ability to slow down time while behind the wheel, a feature I'm pretty sure most GTA 5 players forget about around 5 minutes after it's first introduced. But it's cool as hell and makes him an excellent getaway driver, which aptly represents what he is as a character. A smart, capable guy who's pulled into the schemes of a pair of middle-aged reprobates in search of a better life for himself. As GTA's sole representative of the millennial generation, it's hard not to like him unless you think millennials are a bunch of simpering, avocado toast-eating, participation trophy bedwetters, in which case you probably think he should be way further up the list, but I'm writing this in your nose, so deal with it.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
It was 1999 on...
For my money, San Andreas is the absolute best game in the 3D universe, and that is in no small part down to Carl Johnson. CJ, the wisecracking Californian hailing from the heyday of gangster rap, represents, much like Franklin, a generation of African Americans who came of age during a period of social unrest and biting economic hardship, which doesn't seem to have ever ended. Weird that. Still, as CG, you get to ride bicycles along the sun-kissed Santa Monica beachfront, do dance competitions in modified lowriders, and something that no GTA before it had ever managed to pull off: road trips. Honest to goodness, vast stretches of highway linking three enormous GTA cities. Well, they felt enormous at the time. Also unique to this incarnation of GTA is character customization. CJ is a fixed character, but through various minigames and activities, players can change his vital statistics and level up his strength, his size, his athleticism. You can, by investing considerable time and effort, be the CJ you want to be. And in a rare show of body positivity for the series, all shapes and sizes are valid. In fact, there are even situations where being a big, huge, fat guy is preferable, in the dating simulator for example, or when voicing a ranked list of GTA protagonists. Oh wait, hang on, I might have confused myself there.
Oh yeah! There she is! Liberty City! Yeah. You ever been? No. Crazy place, Niko.
You knew this was coming, and you might think it's the Sude's choice, but Niko Bellic is, without a doubt, Grand Theft Auto's most compelling, most quintessential protagonist. A perfect blend of anonymous player insert and narrative nexus, with an established personality. He has all the things that a GTA protagonist should do. He's funny, he's ambitious, he's a reluctant scumbag, and at the start of the game he, like the player, is a new arrival to Liberty City, an illegal alien in every sense of the term, apart from, spaceships and anal probing and all that. Niko Bellic finds America as bewildering and baffling as we all do, even most Americans I think, but brings a stoic Eastern European detachment to proceedings that spotlights the absurdity of these brash, loud personalities that become Niko Bellic's friends, allies and enemies over the course of the game. In a series that is explicitly a satire of American excess, Niko is the perfect send-up of the American dream. Arriving into New York on a boat, ready for a new life in the capital of Western civilization, and it kinda sucks. And the problems he left back in his homeland don't disappear. In fact, they follow him to Liberty City and collide spectacularly with the various conflicts that are already happening there. I mean, that's not a metaphor, that's a Ken Burns documentary. GTA 4 remains the smartest, most ambitious, and adjusting for the passage of time, most technically impressive GTA ever made. And it's Niko Bellic that pulls us through it, that gives us all the proper context and imbues it with a much more profound sense of satire than could be achieved if he were simply yet another American going about his American business in America. He's the best protagonist, not just because he's the best written, not just because he has the most interesting backstory, and not just because his character model is subject to the forces of the most complex physics simulation that the series has ever had and sadly abandoned by the next game. He's the best protagonist because he's an outsider looking in. He is Grand Theft Auto personified, the perfect avatar through which to explore this exciting, enormous, absolutely deranged and impossibly intricately detailed European view of what America is like. Well, Scottish, which still counts as European despite all that business a while back. And so concludes our definitive ranking of GTA protagonists, apart from Mike from GTA Advance, because he's in a 2D game set in the 3D universe, which makes him frankly too much of an anomaly to think about. And it's not like any of you noticed, the 12 people who played this would rather forget, so yeah, definitive. Pop over to Eurogamer and subscribe for more IGN affiliated content like this.